They were supposed to come home, Emily with her restless smile. Jacob with his old camera, always slung over his shoulder, like it was part of him. They left for the Lost Creek wilderness on a bright morning, promising their families they'd be back before dark. But dark came, and then another dark, and then the long, cold silence, and they never returned. People said it made no sense. Two experienced hikers vanish on a marked Colorado trail, with no storm, no warning. No reason? Search teams moved fast. Rangers swept the rugged terrain. Volunteers fanned out along the canyons. Helicopters thundered overhead, their spotlights cutting through the pines, like blades through fear. But the forest stayed quiet. Too quiet. No backpack. No broken branch. No trace of Emily. No trace of Jacob. Their families taped notes to trailheads, begging anyone, or anything, to lead them to answers. Weeks passed. Then months. Then the painful kind of time that refuses to heal. 8 years. 8 years of theories, sightings that went nowhere, cold leads that froze even colder, and a silence that felt less like absence and more like a secret the mountains refused to share, until one morning, a morning that seemed like every other. A forestry research team, conducting routine soil surveys, deep in a restricted part of the wilderness, went farther than anyone had before. That's when they saw it, a narrow opening in a sandstone wall, small, hidden by brush and shadows. The kind of place search crews might walk past 1,000 times without knowing it existed. They stepped inside. What they found made the weight of those 8 silent years drop all at once, as if the entire forest had been holding its breath for this moment. The cave was colder than the morning air outside. Not winter cold, not ice cold, but the kind of chill that feels like it has been waiting for years. The forestry team stepped deeper inside, their flashlights cutting through dust that had not been disturbed since the day Emily and Jacob vanished. One of the researchers whispered, as if the darkness might hear them. Another called out for backup, because what their lights revealed, even in that first small moment, didn't look natural, didn't look recent, didn't look like anything caused by wildlife, or weather, or time. There were 2 backpacks, resting against the cave wall, covered in a thin layer of earth, as if the mountain had been slowly burying them in silence. Both were faded, but still recognizable. Emily's blue one, Jacob's dark red one. They looked untouched, as if the owners had just stepped away for a moment, but hadn't come back. The researchers froze. No one wanted to move closer. Not yet, because the air felt wrong, still, heavy, like the cave was holding its breath, along with them. Then the lead researcher stepped forward, carefully, slowly, every footstep echoing through the narrow chamber. He reached out, touching the strap of Emily's pack. It crumbled slightly, brittle from years of waiting. And in that instant, the truth didn't fully appear, but it began to form. The team exchanged looks, fear, shock, a quiet, shared understanding. They knew they had found something big, something the entire state had been searching for 8 long years. They radioed for authorities. Their voices shook, because somewhere deeper inside that cave, beyond what the flashlight beams reached, was the answer, and they all felt it. This wasn't just a discovery. This was the beginning of the end of the mystery. The authorities arrived within the hour. Their boots echoed inside the narrow cave, slow, careful, as if they might disturb something that had been sleeping for 8 years. The air felt heavier now, thicker, almost aware of the people entering. No one spoke at first. They simply stared at the blue and red backpacks, leaning against the stone wall, like ghosts of the 2 who once carried them. Emily and Jacob, the silence inside the cave, felt different than the silence outside. Older, deeper, as if it had been holding a secret that it was finally ready to release. A ranger crouched near the backpacks, his flashlight trembling slightly. He brushed away more dust, revealing straps and fabric, faded by time, but unmistakably theirs. "It's them," he whispered, and the words seemed to stop the room. The forestry team watched, some with hands on their heads, others frozen in place, as the reality settled in. 8 years. 8 years of searching, hoping, praying. And now the first real piece of truth sat right in front of them. But it wasn't the whole truth. Not yet. One of the investigators pointed deeper, toward a narrow passage at the back of the cave, almost too dark to see. There were marks in the dust. Small, subtle, but real, as if something, or someone, had been dragged, or had crawled further inside. A chill moved through the group, not from the air, but from the sudden understanding the backpacks were only the beginning. Whatever happened to Emily and Jacob didn't end here. It continued deeper into the mountain. The lead investigator steadied his breathing, lifted his flashlight, and stepped toward the black passage. His voice was low, almost afraid to break the quiet. "We go in." And with that, they moved forward, toward the dark, toward whatever waited inside, toward the truth that had been buried for nearly a decade. The passage narrowed as they moved forward. Their flashlights stretched thin, barely reaching the uneven stone ahead. Every sound echoed. Boots against rock, soft breaths, the quiet hum of radios waiting for news. The deeper they went, the more the air changed. It felt heavier, almost warmer, as if this part of the cave had been sealed away from the world for far too long. One of the investigators paused, shining his light along the wall. There were scratches, not deep, not violent, just faint marks, as if someone had pressed a hand or brushed against the stone. "Years ago, Emily and Jacob came through here," someone whispered. No one argued. The trail of dust on the floor was broken in places, disturbed long ago, but still visible enough to guide them. Then, after a few more steps, the passage widened, and what the lights revealed made every person freeze. Two shapes, low to the ground, resting near a rock shelf, skeletal remains, side by side, leaning gently against each other, as if they had faced those final moments, together. Next to them, Jacob's camera, ruined by time, but still recognizable. A tremor passed through the group. Some lowered their heads, others stepped back, overwhelmed by the weight of 8 years of searching, praying, not knowing. The lead investigator knelt slowly, not touching anything, just observing with a shaken breath. Emily and Jacob hadn't been lost. They hadn't been taken. They hadn't run. They had made it this far, into the darkness, together, maybe seeking shelter, maybe hoping to be found, maybe trying to survive just one more hour. No one could say for sure. But the way their remains rested told its own story, one of fear, endurance, and the final comfort of not being alone at the end. The cave was silent again, but now the silence felt different, not hiding a secret anymore, but releasing one. For a long moment, no one in the cave moved. The investigators just stood there, taking in the quiet truth of Emily and Jacob's final resting place. It was strange how peaceful the chamber felt, as if the mountain itself had been protecting them all these years. One of the rangers stepped closer, light trembling in his hand. He examined the angle of the remains, the way the bones leaned gently together, as if they had chosen not to face the darkness alone. A soft voice broke the silence. They stayed side by side. Another investigator nodded, swallowing hard. They didn't give up on each other. The words echoed through the chamber, soft but heavy, filling the air with something deeper than sorrow, a kind of respect. The team photographed everything carefully, documenting each detail without disturbing a single bone. The dust patterns, the marks on the wall, the ruined camera, the quiet way the remains rested, as if frozen in a final moment of comfort. No one wanted to rush this. It felt wrong to break the stillness, wrong to hurry the unveiling of a story that had waited 8 years to be understood. When the lead investigator finally spoke, his voice was low, steady, but shaking at the edges. "We'll notify the families." Everyone knew what that meant. The families would finally have answers. Closure, the truth they had begged for. But closure is not the same as healing. Not when the reality was this. Emily and Jacob made it this far.
Into the cave.
Into the dark. Together. And never made it back out. A faint draft moved through the chamber, as if the mountain exhaled, free from holding its secret. The investigators slowly stepped back, giving the moment the quiet respect it deserved. This wasn't just a crime scene. This wasn't just evidence. This was the final chapter of two lives that had been missed, searched for, cried for, and remembered every single day for 8 long years. Outside the cave, word began to spread. The radios crackled nonstop. Messages traveling from ranger stations, to county offices, to the families who had waited far too long for answers. But inside the cave, the investigators stayed quiet, still absorbing the weight of what they had found. One of them lifted Jacob's ruined camera, careful not to disturb anything. The metal was cold, crumbled in places. The lens cracked beyond repair, yet even broken, it felt important, as if it still held pieces of their final hours. "Do you think there's anything on it?" someone whispered. "Maybe," another answered. "But after 8 years, no guarantees." Still, just the thought of Jacob trying to document something in those last moments sent a chill through the room. Because cameras only leave clues when someone wants the world to see what happened. A ranger stepped back, taking slow breaths, trying to imagine it. Emily and Jacob making their way through the dark passage, their lights fading, their energy slipping, holding on to each other as hope grew thin. Maybe they were lost, maybe injured, maybe trapped by falling rock, maybe simply unable to find the way back out. No one could know for certain. But the way they rested together, even in death, said something stronger than any report. They didn't face the end alone. As the investigation team continued, their careful documentation, a soft rumble of thunder echoed outside, a storm beginning far above the mountain. It was strange how nature moved on, even when people were standing. Inside, a moment frozen in time. The lead investigator finally gave the order. "Let's bring them home." A phrase simple enough, but heavy, sacred, and long overdue. Emily and Jacob's 8-year mystery was no longer a question. It was becoming a story. A real one. A true one. A final one. The storm outside grew louder. Thunder rolled across the mountains, low and distant, vibrating faintly through the cave walls. The sound didn't frighten the investigators, but it reminded them that the world outside kept moving, even as they stood inside a moment, frozen for 8 years. 2 rangers carefully prepared. The recovery equipment, every movement slow, respectful, deliberate. They weren't just collecting evidence. They were bringing 2 people home. The lead investigator knelt one last time, near the remains, studying the way Emily and Jacob rested together. He imagined them in those final moments, flashlights fading, breathing shallow, the cave cold, their hands maybe touching, their hope slowly slipping away. But together, always together, he whispered quietly, not to the team, but to them. "We found you." The words echoed softly, absorbed by stone, carried into the chamber, like a promise finally fulfilled. Another ranger approached, with a radio in hand. "The families are on their way," she said. Everyone went still for a moment. It wasn't fear. It wasn't dread. It was the weight of empathy. For 8 years, those families lived with questions that tore them apart. Where did they go? Why didn't they come back? Were they hurt? Were they scared? Were they alone? Now the answers were here, in the quiet of this cave, held in the dust, in the way the remains leaned together, in the age camera that once captured their happiest moments. The investigator stood, his voice steady again. "All right," he said. "Let's prepare the exit route. We're not rushing this." The team nodded. Outside, the storm began to fade, the thunder growing softer, as if the mountain itself understood that its long-kept secret was finally being released. Inside, the cave felt different, not empty, not haunting, just peaceful, as if Emily and Jacob, after 8 silent years, were finally ready to go home. The families arrived just after the storm began to fade. They were escorted through the trail by rangers, quietly, slowly, every step heavy with the fear of what they were finally going to see. Emily's mother walked with her hands clasped tightly together, as if holding on to a prayer she wasn't ready to let go of. Jacob's father moved without speaking, eyes fixed on the path ahead, the years of waiting weighing down each breath he took. No one rushed them. No one said, "Prepare yourselves." Everyone simply walked. When they reached the entrance of the cave, the lead investigator stepped forward, his voice soft. "We found them," he said. "They're together, and we're bringing them home." Emily's mother covered her mouth. Jacob's father closed his eyes. Not in shock, not in disbelief, but in relief. The kind that hurts. The kind that pierces deeper than grief. Because answers, even painful ones, finally replaced the endless questions. They did not go inside. The investigators didn't allow it, not until the scene was fully secured. But the families stood at the mouth of the cave, feeling the draft of cold air brush past them, as if the mountain itself was finally letting go of something. It had held too long. They didn't need to see the remains. They didn't need to see the camera. The dust, the space where their children spent, their final hours. Just knowing the truth mattered. Just knowing the search was over. A ranger stepped beside them. "We'll handle everything with care," he promised. Emily's mother nodded, tears slipping down her face, but her voice steady enough to whisper, "Thank you for finding them." Jacob's father finally opened his eyes, looking toward the dark tunnel. "They were together," he said softly. The ranger nodded. Yes, they were. A long silence followed, but it wasn't the painful silence of before. It was the kind that carries peace, the kind that lets the heart begin to accept what the mind has feared for years. The mountain had held its secret. Now it was giving them back. The recovery team moved slowly, carefully, guided by the quiet voices of experience and the heavy weight of responsibility. Inside the cave, flashlights cut gentle paths of light as they prepared to bring Emily and Jacob out of the darkness for the final time. No one rushed. No one spoke louder than a whisper. The silence inside the cave felt sacred now, as if the mountain itself understood the importance of the moment. A ranger placed evidence markers. Another documented the scene, and two more prepared the equipment that would carry the remains safely outside. The lead investigator paused, looking at them one last time, memorizing the stillness, the closeness, the quiet that had held them for 8 years. "Let's bring them home," he repeated softly. The team worked together, lifting with respect, with steady hands, with a kind of reverence, reserved only for those who were lost, far too young. The path through the cave felt different now, warmer, brighter, as if the sharp edge of mystery had softened into something almost peaceful. Outside, the families waited in silence, their eyes fixed on the dark tunnel, hands trembling, hearts bracing for the moment they had imagined 1,000 times, but never wanted to face. Then, the first figures emerged. Not the investigators, not the rangers, but the forms of Emily and Jacob, covered gently, carried carefully, held with a tenderness that words could never express. Emily's mother's knees weakened. Jacob's father gripped her arm, holding her steady. Tears came, but quietly, like the soft release of years of unanswered questions. There was no screaming, no collapse, no chaos, just a long, painful exhale, the kind a heart makes when it finally accepts the truth. The storm had passed. The world felt still, and after 8 silent years, Emily and Jacob were finally leaving the mountain, not lost, not missing, found, together, going home. The sun was beginning to break through the clouds. By the time the recovery team reached the forest clearing, light filtered gently through the pines, soft, warm, as if the world itself wanted to welcome Emily and Jacob home. No sirens, no rush, no noise, just quiet footsteps and the low murmurs of people who understood the importance of what they were carrying. Emily's mother and Jacob's father walked together behind the team, supported by rangers, surrounded by silence. It wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was the silence of peace. A long journey, finally ending. The lead investigator stepped aside, letting the families approach. They didn't touch the coverings, didn't fall apart, didn't collapse in grief. They simply stood together, shoulders trembling, faces lifted toward the morning light. After 8 years of darkness, their children were finally here, Out of the cave, out of the unknown, out of the mystery that had held them. A soft breeze moved through the clearing, lifting the edges of leaves, carrying the scent of wet earth and pine needles. Emily's mother whispered, "Barely a breath." They stayed together. Jacob's father nodded slowly. That's who they were. The rangers bowed their heads. Even the forest seemed to pause, as if acknowledging the moment. There was no need for speeches, no need for dramatic words. The truth was simple. Emily and Jacob were found. Their story was understood. Their last moments were not spent in fear, but in the comfort of each other's presence. And now, they were going home, to the people who had missed them. Every single day, the mountain still stood tall behind them, its shadows deep and ancient, but its burden finally lifted. For the first time in 8 years, it felt lighter. And as the families walked with the recovery team down the winding trail, the morning sun rose higher, casting golden light across the wilderness. A final reminder that even the darkest stories can find their way back to peace.